All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a deeply spiritual, honestly profound framework that's going to completely flip how you view patience, unseen effort, and what it actually means to prosper. Seriously, if you've ever felt like you're just grinding away in the dark, putting in the work without seeing any visible results, this is going to be a real game changer for you. We're going to break down the actual mechanics of waiting and completely reframe that exhaustion we all feel during long-term faithfulness.
Just think about the highly specific, completely unthanked labor that happens literally every single day. We're talking about a father waking up way before dawn, a nurse staying hours past your shift for just one patient, or a widow showing up to a small ministry where, get this, she's been thanked exactly once in 11 years. These micro-narratives remind us of a pretty powerful truth. Absolutely not one quiet act falls outside of divine counting. That seemingly invisible, monotonous grind, it's entirely seen and it is logged.
So that brings us to Section 1, the false map of prosperity. To really get this, we first have to unlearn what the source calls the false map that society has handed us. I mean, think about it. Society totally trains our nervous systems to expect visible abundance and instant rewards, right? We literally get anxious if a web page takes 5 seconds to load, or if a text isn't answered in under a minute. So naturally, if we don't get an immediate return on our life investments, we just assume the field is cursed, or we made a huge mistake. But real prospering, it ripens slowly. It happens entirely unnoticed. It's growing these massive, deep roots beneath the surface, way before any green stalks break through the topsoil. It's asking us to essentially put down the world's measuring stick.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 2, the unseen root system.
Okay, this is where we get a brilliant reframing of pain and weariness. Look, when waiting takes a long time, feeling grief and frustration is completely natural. But here's the shift. Tears are not a sign of a contaminated field. You didn't plant in the wrong place just because you're crying over it. Actually, tears are the very water the soil absorbs to multiply the eventual harvest. It takes something we usually view as a symptom of failure, our own exhaustion and sorrow, and recategorizes the whole thing as a completely crucial ingredient for growth.
And we see this unseen root system applying directly to our everyday, quiet struggles. That long obedience, it is actively building something profound right beneath the surface. For instance, difficult marriages soften invisibly year over year, kind of like an oak tree's thickening bark. For parents of prodigal children, your quiet prayers act as this unseen rope just holding them. All your hidden work, whether it's gathering a harvest in rooms you might never even set foot in, or enduring the daily reality of a slow-healing body, it's doing structural work. A profound, incredibly precious tenderness is being grown inside of you.
All right, let's move on to Section 3, Decoding Galatians 6:9.
We're going to deconstruct this single verse clause by clause. And hey, we really shouldn't treat this as just some pristine, polished quote for a slide deck. This was literal ink on parchment, meant for exhausted, financially strapped people sitting in tiny rooms in ancient Galatia, wondering if their quiet faithfulness even mattered. Let's look at the hidden mechanics of endurance here.
First, by isolating the word us, we uncover something pretty radical. You aren't meant to fight this weariness alone. It's not you go figure it out. No, the divine presence is right there in the dirt, right alongside the planter, physically keeping them upright when their own legs just want to completely give out.
Then we look at doing good, and there's a really sharp distinction to make here. The text isn't asking for famous, extraordinary, or, viral moments. It's talking about the small, repeated, totally unwitnessed good. The sheer grit of simply getting up one more morning to love a person who doesn't love you back, or just refusing to become bitter. That micro-level obedience, that is the good we're talking about.
Next up is due season. Now this operates strictly on a heavenly calendar, definitely not a human one. It's a direct challenge to set down that stopwatch of comparison you've been holding up to your own life. Seriously, your season isn't late just because it's arriving later than your anxious nerves wanted it to.
And finally, notice the word will. There's absolutely no fine print or conditional escape clause here. It doesn't say you might reap or you'll reap if the economy is good. The yield is an absolute certainty. Literally, the only variable is whether you remain in the rows of your field with your sore arm, refusing to quit.
Which brings us to Section 4, the practice of what if.
So, to actually manage the heavy toll of all that waiting, the source prescribes a highly specific 3-beat practice to help reset a tired nervous system. Step 1, ask the question, what if the ripening has already begun underneath? It's not denial, right?
It's just opening a door. Step 2 is absolutely crucial. You have to actually linger in that question for a long breath. Let your shoulders drop, let your jaw soften. And finally, step 3, when you see a small, unexpected kindness in your week, don't just dismiss it as a coincidence. Whisper to yourself, the harvest is beginning. It literally teaches your brain that true growth doesn't require your constant, anxious supervision to finally arrive.
But how does this practice actually change you over time? Well, it happens in passes. That first attempt, it'll probably register as absolutely nothing. You'll still feel exhausted. But by the 30th pass, that anxiety about timing really starts to lose its bite. By the 50th pass, you realize, hey, I've gone hours without obsessively checking the calendar of my promise. And by the 100th pass, you realize you've stopped measuring your life by the wrong metric altogether. The shift from exhaustion to peace isn't some overnight thunderclap. It's a gradual, entirely unseen accumulation.
Now let's look at our final metaphor in section 5, the threshing floor.
So the threshing floor, this quiet, dusty circle out behind the barn, is where the long labor of the farming year finally comes to its conclusion. It's the ultimate place of separation, showing us how all of our life's labor, all that unseen effort and endless waiting, will eventually be sifted to reveal what actually matters.
Think about everything you're carrying during a long season of waiting. All the exhausting elements, the constant worry, comparing yourself to others, the false math of society's success, the borrowed shame. All of that is literally just chaff. On the threshing floor, the wind simply lifts it away. Boom, it's gone. But what stays? The kernel, the absolute core of your quiet, long obedience. Your faithfulness is completely preserved and kept safe. None of the real work is ever wasted.
To wrap things up, I want to leave you with one final, pretty provocative question drawn straight from the text. Are you demanding the entire storehouse all at once, or are you honoring the fragrance? You know, often a harvest announces itself with just a subtle scent on the wind, hours before the orchard openly turns. So ask yourself, are you missing the quiet, beautiful signs of growth in your life right now because you're too busy demanding immediate, overwhelming proof of success? Just take a long exhale, trust that unseen root system, and remember, timing isn't your job. Your job is just the staying. And that brings us to the end of today's explainer. Keep this framework in mind the next time you're feeling weary in your own planting season.